At the very outset, a warm welcome to you all the respected invitees present here in this pre-autumn afternoon for such a noble occasion. I am Arunima Goswami, your host for this evening. On behalf of the organizers, I feel really honored to accompany you all towards a journey of wisdom and intellect, remembrance and introspection, towards a journey to a good man's life who believed in works more than words. And again, I have to say, I feel really blessed to see such a gracious gathering in front of me today. This program is truly a cordial tribute to a respected, dedicated, and renowned statistician of our state, Braja Nath. Today, we will present a memorial lecture titled The Numbers Game, You Cannot Resolve What You Cannot Measure, with the grand participation of renowned journalist, Ramon Magsaysay Awardee, Honorable Mr. Sainath. Also, a book highlighting important role of Braja Nath strengthening statistical system of the state also be released today.
It's a bit intimidating to be talking about numbers to so many statisticians. Perhaps you will consider me your non-sampling error. But thank you, Divya Jyoti, for sending me the links to the works of and the papers of Braja Nath Das. And I did follow through several of the links. I was, of course, most interested in the Human Development Report because it shows which way he was thinking about data. And I found that I am very much on the same page in that there is a recognition, there has to be a recognition that data is a tool shaped by human beings. It will reflect the errors and biases and failures of human beings, as it will reflect their achievements and their intelligence as well. Also, it was very clear to me from looking at the 2 or 3 of the papers that he'd done that he understands that everything unfolds in a context, and data will be relevant or irrelevant according to the context in which it is unfolding. It also calls for a knowledge of the society in which one is functioning. That construction of data is so critical, that clarity of conception, the skepticism of the process itself. Data wielded without skepticism can be positively dangerous, as we are seeing every day in our society today. Now, I'll give you an example. Also, why do we construct data? Let me put 3 questions and answer them. Is statistical data vital to our world and our existence and our lives? Without question, yes. Is it necessary to have robust statistical data systems in every country and society of the world? Without hesitation, yes. A modern society will find it crippled to function without these. But do I find statistical data important to my practice of journalism? Absolutely, yes. Does good data amount to the truth? No. Okay? Facts also don't amount to the truth. Data in itself does not amount to the truth. Data can help us get to the truth. Data are meant to take us towards the truth. They give us the trends, they give us the direction depending on how we formulated the questions. How we formulate that question, what thinking goes into that, will improperly constituted, they can lead us to serious mistruths rather than the truth. The point here I'm making is, data is essential and vital to us, but do not conflate data with the truth. That is a much larger thing. And I think this is what I found in whatever work you sent me of Braja Nath. He is at every stage skeptical. He is skeptical of what are you looking at? Why are you not looking at that instead of this? Who is doing the looking? Have these people done any field work? That comes out in his comments, it comes out in his work. So the thing is that however data can help us to get to the truth, do not conflate it with the truth. What questions are, let me say, give you a couple of examples. How you construct, what is it you want to reflect in the mid-1990s, or rather the early 1990s. The Planning Commission and others came up with, for the NSS rather, with a peculiar creature called thin sample. Thin sample. Excuse me. They came up with a thin sample. Some of these consisted of just one question, single question. Okay? One of the most famous in 93-94 was just asking, essentially it boiled down to one question. The justification for thin sample was the major surveys of the NSS, they are 5-yearly, they take so much time. By the time the data comes, it's dated. You all know these arguments. Thin sample was done rapidly. One question which entertained me no end, you see the NSS, by the way, is a round-the-year process. And I actually happened to be in a village when the surveyors came. Now, what was that question, central question? Immediately you will see how many errors are possible. The central question was, have you and your family eaten 2 square meals today? Now, what is a meal? How do you define a meal? What is square? What is your family? What is today? Because if today is harvest season, people have eaten 3 times also. If it's the non-harvest season, it's the lean season, they may not have eaten at all. So you see how many errors are embedded in one line. Have you and your family eaten 2 square meals today? But there are another dozen errors coming into it. Now, who do they consider? You see, who do you query in these household surveys? You query head of the household. In terms of food consumption, now you immediately take it that the head of the household is a man. The male head of the household is the least qualified person to tell you about the consumption of food in the household. He is the only fellow who has eaten 2 meals a day. He's eaten first, he's eaten best. Okay? That the woman who knows who eats, first feeds her husband, then the children, then the grandparents, then herself. She knows exactly what each person has eaten. She knows exactly how much food has been consumed by whom. Right? But you don't ask her because she's not head of the household. Incidentally, census after census shows us that 19 to 20%, almost 1/5 of households in rural India, have always been female-led. They have been female-led households. But in high migration areas, that can be 45, 50%, like Rayalaseema, Anantapur, Chittoor, Kadapa, Mehboob Nagar. I would say in Mehboob Nagar, Telangana, female-led households are over 50% because of the scale of migrations from there all over the country. Same with Bolangir or Kalahandi. Okay? Female-led households are, but you want to talk to a male. I've seen this in the collection of data on farmers' suicides also. Okay? That the police fellow who has come in there to get details, he won't even address that woman, he won't even express a sign of condolence. He is talking to her son. That boy is 13 or 14, but he's the male. He is the male of the household. So he is presumed to be the purveyor of all knowledge. That fellow doesn't know anything, and he's traumatized more than his mother. But you're going to ask him the questions. Anyway. So this thin sample survey, what happened? You should really, it is a classic of a comedy of errors leading to a tragedy of data. Now, I am the person that, and you surveyors come to my house. Yeah? Now, the whole village gathers around. That is the afternoon's entertainment, no? Somebody has come to ask questions. So everybody will be crowding, looking over the wall. Some will be inside the wall, inside the house. Everybody will be looking. And he'll ask me, have you and your family eaten 2 square meals today? Now there are so many ego and cultural issues involved. You're asking me to state that I am incapable of feeding my family. Imagine what that does to my ego. Huh? Am I going to say no? Okay. But there are different cultural regions. In East UP, if you ask, typically, as a person who has reported from all the major states of this country, in East UP, if you ask a person a question like, have you and your family eaten well? How are you doing today? He will say, by the grace of God and your good wishes, we are doing very well. You ask that same question in Kerala, they will tell you, we are doing very badly and we are going to pull this government down. Now this data ends up showing that people are eating better in East UP than in Kerala. Because of the stupidity of the question. You ask a stupid question, you'll get worthless answers. Okay, this is one of those things that I think. So, I think, who do we address in a survey? But more importantly, before we go out, what are the questions we are going to ask? Why do human beings collect data? What do we use it for? Are data some pure autonomous fruit hanging in the forest that we go and pluck? Yeah, do they have a life of their own? They have what we invest in that data. What humans put into the numbers, how humans frame the question, that is going to, and more, it is a vital need for us to have great data. And even more vitally, we need skepticism in the organizing of questions. That skepticism means, what is the society? It's like that UP Kerala question. Who are we asking the question? In what political, social, cultural, economic context are we asking the question? So, another thing, which I'll come to at the end, we need data audits. The National Crime Records Bureau, to my knowledge, has not done a data audit in 14 years. Okay? Especially, I can even understand the first 4 of those years, but in 2014 and in 2019, they majorly changed the methodology, majorly changed the definitions of farmer suicide. The governments did that. Now, when you do all that, the data that you collect, every one of you here knows, it has to be subjected to a data audit to see what is the quality and worth of this data. They have not. No major institutions in this country that I'm aware of have been conducting regular data audits. They have not done that. Then we need data, but data minus skepticism in the minds of its users, that's positively dangerous. And then there is also the question of a cultural, political context today, where for a lot of people, data doesn't matter at all. Everything is determined by my faith. Okay? Let me give you an example. At this moment in the country, skepticism is being rapidly dismantled. If we don't teach the children to question and be skeptical, we are inflicting a huge cruelty on our children if we don't teach them to question, if we don't teach them to challenge, if we don't teach them to ask, why is it so? Some of the great children's books in the world are titled, Ask Me Why. Some of the best children's literature comes under the series, Ask Me Why. Because children are supposed to ask. They're supposed to learn, challenge, and grow. But there are those in the political context for whom, what is data? Let me introduce you to my own police commissioner of Mumbai, Satyapal Singh, who became MP and became junior minister of education. Satyapal Singh ji I knew him when he was police commissioner Mumbai. I met him once when he was police commissioner Pune also. Satyapal Singh ji made it his mission in life to demolish Charles Darwin. Okay? Charles Darwin is nonsense. And by the way, please note, the NCRT has junked Charles Darwin. Incidentally, in those chapters that I have junked, where they have junked Charles Darwin, they have also junked the work of P. Sainath. So I consider myself in very distinguished company. Charles Darwin and me. Okay? So I'm in very distinguished company, but this is the fact. Satyapal Singh ji in 2019, just before the elections, Lucknow, he had made a speech. The next day on the same platform, or maybe a day later, I was to speak. The audience would not let me speak until I answered their questions about what Satyapal Singh ji had said. I said, listen, Baba, I wasn't there. They said, no, we are telling you what he said. You answer. Satyapal Singh ji said, this theory of evolution, Darwin's theories are all rubbish. They are purely unscientific. They are unscientific because, let me ask you, he told the audience, can anyone here claim to have gone to the jungle and seen apes turn into men? The Minister of Education. He said, have any of you gone into the forest and watched apes turn into men? That is such rubbish. So they asked me this question. I said, Satyapal ji has a point. He has a point. I concede the point. No one of us has gone into the jungle and watched apes turn into men. But we live in extraordinary times where we are privileged to see so many people like Satyapalji and his colleagues successfully attempting the reverse process. Okay, we can laugh at it, but the tragedy is that is now in the textbooks. The tragedy is what we are laughing at and dismissing as we should is in the textbooks. Your child is being taught that at school. Are you going to raise a generation of idiots? Yeah. I believe our future generations will not forgive us for our silence today, for the damage we have done them, for the damage we have done to their rights and their entitlements. So, by the way, Satyapal ji has a BA in physics, he has a MA in chemistry, he has an MPhil in chemistry, MA in chemistry, an MPhil in chemistry, and 2 PhDs. Okay, so he's highly educated. And he studied in all. I have, arrived at a different definition for highly educated. Many of the Indian elite, some of these people have done their things in Harvard and Princeton, and I say that they are not highly educated, they are expensively educated. And there's a very big difference. I consider a lot of the fisher folk of this country to be highly educated about the seas. I consider the Adivasis to be highly educated about the forest, about ecological balance. I consider farmers to be highly educated about the soil. Yeah? So, are we looking at these people, are we going to call them highly educated or expensively educated? Also, another thing is, when we collect particular kinds of data, even with the best of intention, if we lack a context, the correct authentic data is also meaningless. Let me give you an example and you tell me why it's meaningless. I am certifying that the data I am going to read to you is authentic and true in itself, and it is meaningless in the larger context of our climate change world. Take water. Take water. The government data on water tells us that in 1951, per capita availability of water was 5,177 cubic meters. Remember, India has 17% of the world's population, 4% of the world's fresh water. Okay? 17% of the world's population, 4% of the world's fresh water. Available water in 1951 was 5,177 cubic meters. In 2001, 50 years later, that had fallen to 1,816 cubic meters. 2011, it had fallen to 1,545 cubic meters. This year, January, the estimate, I'm just reading from Press Information Bureau, Government of India, Ministry of Water Resources Development, it had fallen to 1,341 cubic meters. Forgive my math, but I think that's a fall from 5,177 to 1,341 is close to 70% fall. Now, this is important data. It is it is the best data we have, whether I like it or not. It's the only data we have. Why do I then say that in the larger context of our world today, we are doing grave injustice by looking only at this data? Why do I say that? Because anyone wants to tell me why this data in the larger context is meaningless to the future of the planet? Because we are only looking at per capita availability of water for human beings. There are 8 million other species in your country. Is anyone looking at the per capita water availability of the sacred cow? Is anyone looking at the per capita water availability of Assam's elephants? Yeah? In the era of climate change, you're going to have to look at all species. You cannot say, no, I've got this data, I'm only going to look at human beings. What's happening to other species, like it or not, is affecting you. You can fool yourself as much as you want, but it is affecting you. So here, this is what I mean by context. All the data, this is not dishonest data. This is not bogus data. It is, people have put hard work into doing this and putting this data, but we constructed data for looking at human beings. Let me give you 2 other examples on this. What happens when you create, those of you who are working with the statistical and data systems will love this story. Madhya Pradesh, 93-94. One of the finest IAS officers in the country, then PS to Chief Minister Digvijay Singh, very fine officer, told me, actually, I suspect that he felt that the data was too good to be true. They got data from one district, one block in Jhabua district of Madhya Pradesh. And the data was, I admit, beautifully organized. This was rainfall data. This was rainfall data, and it was beautifully organized. So then the government of Madhya Pradesh instructed that time that was Madhya Pradesh included Chhattisgarh, it had 45 districts. And they ordered all the other districts to follow this model of rainfall data collection. Now there was a small problem with that. And one of my economist friends pointed it out to me. I can't remember his name, but so I also went. Some of us went and started searching about this beautifully constituted rainfall data. Now what had happened was that we asked this man a question, and the officer who had collected the data, he was a very honest fellow. He was a very sincere, honest fellow. He was not lackadaisical, he was not lazy, he was a very honest fellow. But look at the bureaucratic context. So he was asked this question, your data is wonderful, etc., but please tell us how you have compiled this data when not a single rain gauge is working in your block for the last 3 years. You have collected rainfall data without a single rain gauge working in your block. He explained. And his explanation was genuine and honest. He brought 2 files. One file thicker, one file thinner. The thicker file was his appeals to the block headquarters, to the district headquarters, to Bhopal ministry. Please to note, no rain gauge is working in my block. Please note, no rain gauge is working in my block. Please to replace rain gauge in my block. No answers. The other file was messages from the bosses saying, it has been noted that you have failed for the third successive year to file data, rainfall data. Please note that we will initiate departmental proceedings if the data are not submitted by such and such. Are you all familiar with this? Yeah? It sounds authentic to you? Yes. So he said that the only thing to do was to create the data, but honestly. So what he did, he took the district gazetteer. Most of you know that rainfall patterns, they have a secular consistency for 50, 60 years. Rainfall patterns don't change every year. They don't change every 5 years or every 10 years. Now it is changing every year with climate change becoming. But this was 93. I'm talking about 1993, 94. He took the base data from the gazetteer and he looked at the whole, which was for the whole region, and he argued very correctly, at one level very correctly, he argued that block and district are administrative divisions. They are not rainfall boundaries. So what is true for the region will also be true for my block. I do not discredit that argument. There is a certain validity to it. Blocks and districts are administrative boundaries. Rainfall is a has regional and natural boundaries. So he took that, he averaged it over so many years of data and created this astonishingly good, well-organized data. Now there was a problem with that. He borrowed from the neighboring blocks what they had got, everything else, and he made it for the region. The problem with that was that not a single rain gauge was working in the other blocks also. And they were averaging his data of the previous year. Because government of Madhya Pradesh has told them, this is the model. You follow? So they were averaging his data, he was averaging their data. And an entire construction of rainfall data was based on this. And budgetary allocations for water and water resources were being made on this data. Now, I don't know, can you blame that officer? I don't blame that officer. I mean, those days, young man, but he was in his 30s or 40s, but I don't see how I can blame him for, you're getting notes saying departmental proceedings will be initiated, etc., things like that. So that's one kind of problem that you run into. Then there is the other kind of stuff where, massive data without any knowledge of the subject. I believe the economists are the world champions in this nonsense. I give you a fun story. So, of course, it's only an apocryphal story, but so this economist, working with a big private think tank in the city, he is racing down the highway in his SUV, in his wonderful Range Rover SUV. He is racing to a party of his friends in somebody's farmhouse. This country also, in Delhi, there is this wonderful idea. You buy something, call it a farmhouse. Everything except farming happens there. Anything but farming will happen there, but you call it farmhouse. Anyway, he is racing to someone's farmhouse because they're all old. There's a bachelor party where they're all meeting after many years, and everybody has to bring some part of the gift for the food or whatever. So he is wondering, he had come right from a very big important corporate meeting. So he was racing and he was wondering, what should I take? What should I take? Then he saw a lonely shepherd, herder, sheep, dangar. He sees this shepherd, and there are God knows how many sheep around him. There are sheep behind the trees, behind the rocks. There are hundreds of trees. And then our bright young economist from the think tank has an idea. Here is this, Dehat ka yokal. Let me take a gift. I will take one of those sheep for my party. So it's all wilderness. I mean, there is one stream near here, rocks over there, forest over there. Only the shepherd and his big dog. Shepherds have sheepdogs. So shepherd and his big dog are standing there, and he goes up to the shepherd and he says, bet you $100, bet you $100 against one of your sheep that I can tell you the precise number of your sheep, of the precise number of the sheep in this flock. The shepherd thinks and he says, he cannot possibly get the right number. Because there are sheep sitting down behind the rocks. There are sheep in the forest. There are sheep behind the trees. So how will this fellow, he is an arrogant fellow, obviously he cannot get the correct number. So the shepherd says, okay, the bet is on. And the bright young economist from the think tank says, 973. The shepherd is shocked and heartbroken because the number is correct. He did some sample survey, whatever. So he got the number right. 973 sheep. The shepherd is an honest fellow. He can lie, but he's an honest fellow. He says, okay, damn it. Take your sheep and go. Because he's feeling bad that he has lost a bet. And the triumphant young economist grabs the nearest animal and starts walking off towards his SUV, clutching his prize. Then the shepherd says, hey, it is customary to offer the loser a double or nothing bet. And this guy is impatient to get to the party. Still holding his animal, he's saying, yeah, what do you want to bet on? And the shepherd says, bet you $100, I can bet you $100 plus my animal that I can tell you your correct job and description. This chap says, oh, this illiterate idiot, what would he know about? So he says, oh, okay, you're on, double or nothing. And the shepherd says, you're an economist with a leading think tank in the city. Still, now he's lost the bet, he's lost everything. He's lost $100, he's lost the bet. He tells the shepherd, how the hell did you know that? And the shepherd says, first put down my dog, then I'll tell you. See, he knew all the numbers, he got all the numbers right. He couldn't tell a sheep from a dog. Okay? Again and again I'm saying, domain knowledge, knowledge of the area, knowledge of the society, contextualization of the data, all this has to start at the level of the questions you form around which you collect and collate the data. Now, you look at our own, look at what's happening to people who do that honestly and create correct data. One of the most important data sets we are getting every so many years is from the National Family Health Surveys, correct? These are invaluable. Yeah. And the director of that Institute of Population Sciences was suspended on corruption and lost his job, though later they dropped the corruption charge, knowing that it was false, because he refused to drop a question from the questionnaire. He refused to drop the question on anemia, female anemia. You know that 60% of women in the important age groups in this country suffer from anemia. Now that bloody figure has remained consistent for decades. It doesn't go down. So what do? Get rid of the data. You drop that question, they told him. Poor Professor James, I understand, told them that it is vital data. He didn't tell me, I'm telling you. Vital data, how can you drop? He said it will be a loss to planning, it will be a loss to health issues if you do this. They said, no. The same question is asked in other questionnaires also. Why is it important that it should be asked? This is the National Family Health Survey. If it should be asked anywhere, it should be asked here first. Yeah. He resisted this data being, this question being dropped. Then Professor James was served with a notice, suspended, corruption. No mention of what corruption. No mention. What was the supposed corrupt practice? Nothing. He was just suspended. Then finally, he offered his resignation, and the day his letter is submitted, that day the corruption charges are dropped. Now, what is an honest data surveyor to do? Huh? The man has an impeccable reputation. He has a high reputation for integrity. But because he declined to withdraw that question, now the National Family Health Survey is going to be progressively degraded. Because the next person who comes in knows what his fate is if he doesn't agree to change certain parameters. I will ask every one of you, can the atmosphere of intimidation, don't care, I have my faith, I am the Vishwaguru, can anyone in this room tell me one authentic data frame on how many people in this country died of COVID-19? Can all the statisticians here tell me that in their heart, from their heart, that this is a figure, it is correct. We know it to be roughly correct. Can any one of you say that?
I listened to a speech of yours. It is upward of 400 from Johns Hopkins, then WHO.
Yeah.
I listened to yours.
See, there are several estimates of it. Let me tell the audience that, since you heard it. The Lancet, there are many sources which were tracking COVID deaths. And I'm not saying that any one of these sources is sacred. I know that Lancet has made a mess. The paper they carried on farmer suicides was silly. But when you look at a number of sources across the world, Lancet said 4.2 million. Johns Hopkins for a while was running three parallel estimates based on different methodologies. You could choose. All of them were above 4 million. World Health Organization said 4.7 million, which led to Government of India blasting the WHO, though the chief scientist of the WHO was an Indian at the time. They blasted the WHO and the WHO went into silence. World Development Council, Washington DC said 4.9 million. And did you find any editorials in your newspaper discussing this? Because Government of India said 4,86,000 in the period. And once the Vishwa Guru has spoken, another Vishwa Guru spoke few days ago, reminding me of Satyapal Singh. Anurag Thakur, interviewed by school children in a school assembly, the school asked him, children asked him, sir, he asked them, who was the first traveler in space? Some of them said Yuri Gagarin, some of them, he said, no, you're wrong. Hanuman was the first space traveler. Did you read this? Yeah. This is what your children are going to read in the textbooks. Okay. There were some very nice memes on the internet where Hanuman issues a denial and says it was Yuri Gagarin. So this is the kind of you just said 4 lakh, later they revised it to 5,21,000, adding another 6 months. But no figures were given to us of what the others had added to their numbers in those 6 months. So you have this unbelievable situation where the country with at least the second largest number of fatal casualties. I mean, if you look at per capita and per population, then the USA had a very serious number of casualties with the anti-vax propaganda, all that sort of stuff. But in sheer absolute numbers.
Per capita, how can it be?
No, I mean per. Correct. You are correct, sir. I agree with you, sir. I'm saying everything is now based on the 2011 census. It is now 15 years since that census. But I'm saying at this time, in 2021, that was the only data. Because the COVID period was, in the lockdown period in India, began on March 24th, 25th, 2020. And unofficially it gets over in late 22, early 23. But the figures of all the institutions were from January 2020 to 22 April or something like that. Now, 6 other institutions worldwide are saying above 4 million. You are saying 4,86,000. You are not required. The media do not ask you to provide any proof of this figure. And actually, people write articles, Niti Aayog officials write articles. In my home state or birth state of Tamil Nadu, they refer to Niti Aayog as Niti Ayo. And the Niti Aayog, they write articles about Western countries demeaning India and making these sort of figures. They even accuse the United Nations Development Program and the Human Development Report of faking figures or using dubious methodology because everybody is jealous of us. Everybody is jealous of us. Yesterday I saw on the internet one lady in Japan. I don't know if you saw this. One Indian lady in Japan saying that Japan is such a dangerous society. It is actually one of the safest societies in the world for women on the road. Probably the safest. But I have the confidence to live here because Modi ji has connections. I don't know what happened to those connections in the Hathras gang rape. I don't know what happened to those connections for the thousands of Indian women who suffer rape each year. But for someone in Japan, we were able, because we are the Vishwaguru. Right? So you had COVID-19 numbers. Then let's take poverty numbers. In fact, I've stopped looking at the bloody poverty numbers for the amount of nonsense that, I don't even know whether today it's 28 rupees and 33 rupees rural, urban per day capita. But I do know that the assumptions with which you work will determine your numbers. Do you know that do you know which was the lowest point of poverty in Indian history? 1996. Yeah, when the Planning Commission said it leaked, or they didn't say it, they at least had some sense of shame. They didn't say it publicly. They leaked it to the Economic Times. Poverty has fallen to a historic low of 19%. That means ever since then it's been climbing. Okay, but poverty has fallen to a historic low of 19%. Government official sources seeking anonymity say, if poverty has fallen to such a level, you'd be waving a flag. Why will you seek anonymity? It's like Einstein seeking anonymity for E is equal to mc squared. Yeah. Then, the man who threw that rubbish into the dustbin was Sri Madhu Dandavate. He came in 97, he came as the deputy chairperson of Planning Commission. So I was going to get him to release my book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought. We passed each other on the stair. I was going to his room, I had an appointment, but he was running out. And he stopped on the staircase, laughed, patted me and said, "Kill me, I say. I doubled poverty in your country today." I said, "What?" He went and threw out all the bogus assumptions that the economists had added. Poverty went back to 39%. At least he had that sense of humor. He said, "Kill me, I say. I doubled poverty in your country today." He was showing you how ridiculous this game of numbers can be if you do not have integrity, if you do not have the right questions, if you bring in fake and false assumptions to suit a political dispensation, right? None of this matters. All your data doesn't matter because it's born out of insincerity and rubbish. That was his point. In the 12th round of, in 2011-12, Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia scrapped one round of the NSS. He felt it was 2011-12, sir? Yeah. He just scrapped it saying, the data is doubtful because it's a drought period. Why should you not collect data in a drought period? Anyway, I think you should at least have one survey that collects data in the drought period. You can do a follow-up, a corollary in the non-drought period. But anyway, so on the whim of the deputy chairperson, that was thrown out. Today you have, and mind you, this is going to create so much disruption in data. Today you have AI, artificial intelligence. I amuse myself now and then by asking some questions around it. See, what is AI doing? It is trawling every available database. Yeah? And then it just gives you rubbish. Very often it gives you rubbish because the databases it has access to are rubbish. Let me give you a different thing. For instance, if you ask ChatGPT to write you an essay on the Palestine problem and Gaza, it is going to get you will find it's, trying to play it down, low-key, trying to create all kinds of, it's rubbish but it is not doing something, it is just drawing from all the databases in the world which are dominated by Western knowledge, by Western sources. So it's going to come up with that. If you ask about critical issues in Indian history, it will give you what is the sources it's going to trawl? It's going to look at written, published sources, the bulk of which are by the colonial administration. A hell of a lot of freedom fighters, their work never got digitized, if they wrote at all. They had oral histories. So you're going to have, AI is going to actually complicate things a lot more, though it can be otherwise. It can be helpful in some ways, but that's not going to happen in my opinion. It's going to go up. Then you have a complete disregard for knowledge, a mythicalization. Yeah? The creating of myths. And in this country, shame on us, 2014-15, Science Congress, a paper is presented by academics of Pushpak Vimanam, existing aircraft in India existing 20,000 years ago. Nice diagram of it. Apparently that aircraft could even fly backwards. I wanted to ask the author, but I never met him, whether it could also flap its wings. This entire Pushpak Vimanam, ancient aircraft, it comes in the 1920s, 1930s. When feeling humiliated by being a slave nation, a lot of people, unlike Gandhi, unlike others, unlike progressives, they retreated into a mythical past. Okay? So you have this. Now this was presented at a Science Congress, Indian Science Congress. India's last Nobel Prize winner, Venki Ramakrishnan, left after that session and said he would not attend another Indian Science Congress. I mean, that's how bad it was. Where you have, look, I personally think that the census of India is a remarkable document. I find it's a treasure house of information. It's a treasure house of information. But if you disaggregate the data, you will run into all kinds of problems. Especially, say, if you disaggregate the data around the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. I'm very pleased to tell you that I had a role in changing that wretched nomenclature. They used to call them primitive tribes. Officially, that was the nomenclature. Simply because they belong to a pre-agrarian culture, Iron Age technology. Okay. Now, what happens in the Indian census? As I said, I'm a big user of the census, but you have to know how to approach the data. For instance, the census of India is so large that the pluses and minuses, the overcounting, the undercounting, sometimes cancel each other out. So you get aggregate figures which are very close to the truth. I don't believe anywhere that large-scale data is 1,000,000% accurate. If you look for that, you're going to be looking the rest of your life. You're going to look for data that is authentic, close to accurate, gives you the best you can get. And you see, you look for it in that, you look for trends, not for whole truths and absolute truths. You look for trends. So what happened is, I'm sure many of you have heard of the great bureaucrat Pandit B.D. Sharma, right? Who was chairman of the National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes, and who gave most of his life to the Adivasis. Yeah? In the east of India, especially in the triangle between Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Bihar, there is this tribe, ancient tribe called Birhor. Who are they? Bir is forest. Ho is people. People of the forest. That's where the word Birhor comes from. They're an extraordinary tribe. I have lived with them, stayed with them, done their migration journeys. I was puzzled by the data completely when B.D. Sharma explained it to me. He said they move in a triangle between these areas. In different regions, they are given different names. So in Palamu, Jharkhand area, they're called Birho. In Odisha and in Sundargarh and in Mayurbhanj, they're called Mankhidi because they catch monkeys. They trap monkeys on the request of farmers in the harvest period. The monkeys come and destroy your harvest. The Birhors capture these monkeys and release them in the far-off forest. That is their job. In another area, they're known as Mankhidia. Now, this is a tribe in serious decline. It's a tribe in very serious decline. But when Pandit B.D. Sharma came as chairman of NCST, he called the officers and said, my dear, these three tribes are one and the same. So they made the correction, and though they were still very small, the Birhor population doubled. Government of Odisha took out a press release claiming that the Odisha government's development programs had saved the Birhors from extinction because their population had doubled. Their population had doubled because of a little mathematics, where three tribes were correctly identified as a single tribe. Government of Odisha actually took out a publication also on the Birhors. There also it says their role in saving the Birhor from extinction. The Birhor are still on the way to extinction. Okay, that's the thing. And then there is the Indian condition of arbitrariness, which everyone working in official data and statistical institutes knows. I will more or less wind it up there for you, but this is what happens. One of the great IAS officers of Tamil Nadu, Sheila Rani Chunkat, she also ended up being chief secretary, but she was a collector of Pudukkottai when I knew her. She narrated to me saying how ashamed she was of how much of a lesson she learned from arbitrarily ordering someone to do something. So who are your surveyors? This was animal and livestock census. Animal and livestock. So all the LIC, school teacher, this officer, that clerk, they're all your surveyors. So she called them, gave them a briefing, what you should do, and they had not done it before. The data sheets came back very poor, very poor quality, very poor quantity. The data sheets came back. Sheila Rani, now retired, Sheila Rani madam is a person of very, very strong temper. She summoned everybody and she blasted them. And she said, I'll have your skin if you don't come back in 2 weeks with every column filled out. Something like that, she said. I'm not giving the exact words. But she said she would, they were going to suffer if they didn't come back with so they came back. Then she's looking at the sheets and she finds that in her district of Pudukkottai, deep in Tamil Nadu, there are 600 camels, thousands of rabbits. There are all sorts of animals. She calls them again for a meeting. And she shouts, and then they say, Amma, you only told us not to leave any column blank. Yeah. The boss said, don't leave any column blank. They filled the column. Like my poor friend in Jabua, he did some averaging and put data there for the rainfall, which was a much higher level, of course, but still. Arbitrariness of data means that you will get very different figures for the same exercise in an East UP or in a Kerala. In a Kerala where you ask questions, everybody wants to have his answer recorded. And they will abuse you if they don't. Everyone in the panchayat will want my figure, you take my thing. I've done reporting in both these regions, and I can tell you there is total popular participation in that enumeration process. And with the result that today they are claiming to be the first fully digitally literate state in the country. I don't care if it's not 100%. The fact is, it is an incredible achievement. Yeah. As I said, data doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It has to give you a picture. It has to give you a trend. So whether I just quote for you in conclusion, one data scientist, Andrea Rui, who is a professor of data science, teaching at New York University. And she says, I'm a data scientist who is skeptical about data. She praises the need for data like I did. She insists that data is not a perfect representation of reality like I did. She said, here is what she said. All of us ask, I frequently make this error of asking the question, what does the data say? And she is saying, the data don't say anything. Humans say things. The data don't say anything. Humans say things. They say what they notice on looking at the data. On looking at the data, we say this is what we notice. She says, data cannot say anything more about an issue than a hammer can build a house. It's a tool. Yeah? And so she says, I have to remind people, however important data is in our lives, it's not a perfect representation of reality. It's a fundamentally human construct and therefore subjected to biases, limitations, and other meaningful and consequential imperfections. Data is therefore as useful as its quality and the skills of the person wielding the data. It's as useful as its quality and the skills of the person. Yeah. And the last one point I will make is, because this madness we have not gotten over in 30 years, suddenly all important things in life are about measured by GDP growth. For God's sake, the man who invented the concept, Simon Kuznets, who at least he formulated it in a series form, never said, use GDP as a measure of human welfare. He never said that. I will tell you exactly what Simon Kuznets said. He said, the welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measurement of national income. Now, if all of us in this room, with our different salaries, earnings, you take an average per capita income, it's ridiculous. It doesn't represent any one individual in the room. And the whole idea of adding to GDP, look, this auditorium, this lovely little auditorium, when built, it added to GDP. If we demolish this auditorium, it will add to GDP. If we rebuild it, it will add to GDP, because GDP is the aggregation of all economic data within particular national boundaries. But now we are making GDP as, oh, tomorrow we are going to be the third biggest economy in the world. You know, who are you? Why are you? You should be looking at measurements of human welfare like incidence of anemia in Indian women. You should be looking at extent of percentage of disability among children below 5. Yeah, these are the issues that you should be looking at. There is also one very Jomo Sundaram, economist based in Singapore or Malaysia, Jomo Kwame Sundaram. He speaks about the dead rat theory of GDP. Okay, so because but first, before that, also let me remind you that some of the greatest labor of the human race does not figure in the GDP. Women's unpaid work. ILO data analyzed by Oxfam show us that women and adolescent girls in this world, in our world, you know how many hours of unpaid work women and adolescent girls do every year, every day? Every day of every year? 12.5 billion hours. 12.5 billion hours, especially in care work. Women, now, this doesn't go into your GDP because it's not paid. Then, further, the ILO Oxfam show us that what happens if we calculate the value of that labor, and they did it very seriously, region-wise minimum wage. Okay? Region-wise, you know what is the value of women's unpaid labor annually? $10.5 trillion. Trillion is 12 zeros. I can't even fit it in my head. $12.5 trillion of unpaid work. The value. By the way, $12.5 trillion is greater than the value of the top 3 tech companies in the world. Okay. So Jomo and others narrate the story of this adding to GDP, but this is not in the GDP. None of this will come in the GDP. But incidentally, in your own country, in your own villages, you can see millions, tens of millions of women still use cow dung. They still use cow dung as a fuel. It's a horrible thing for the women because in a closed hut, it's actually extremely bad. But the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, 25 years ago, had looked at it in another way. How much it is saving you in fuel imports. How many dollars it is saving you in fuel imports. But you're not going to put cow dung on the... Cow dung is not listed on the stock exchange. So no one's going to put cow dung in the GDP. Cow dung is not listed on the stock exchange, though a lot of bullshit is. Maybe it's a gender issue, cow versus bull. The Jomo Sundaram says, these two economists are walking down the street, discussing the market and other noble concepts, and they see a dead rat. The senior economist tells the younger fellow, I'll give you 10,000 rupees if you will eat that rat, the dead rat. The younger fellow makes a quick cost-benefit analysis and says, okay, and eats it. And the senior has to give him $10,000. A week later, they're going down the same road. Both are feeling ashamed. The young man is feeling ashamed because he ate a rat. He's the only fellow known in the world to have eaten a dead rat, like that. And the older fellow is feeling a bit stupid because he lost $10,000. So the older guy now says, will you give me back my $10,000 if I eat this dead rat which they see? And this younger man says yes, and he eats it and he returns that. And then as they're going away, the younger man says, we are both a pair of idiots. We ate 2 dead rats for nothing. The older man says, remember we added $20,000 to the GDP. Okay, so I'm saying data, statistics, these numbers are about us. And I notice that Braja Nath does not worship at the altar of GDP. That's why his interest is in the Human Development Report, and I believe that was the first Human Development Report of Assam and the Northeast. So look at the human element, input, output, errors, sampling, non-sampling. Look at all these. We need to develop a society with educated skepticism. The scientific temper, as Nehru called it. Here we need to do that. I hope we can. Thank you very much.